Oh, hello. My name's Tom Carhill. Today is the 15th, 10th, 2013. There's just a video I'm making about something that I noticed a while ago. Probably most of you will be aware of the guy called somebody or another, Litinenko, who got poisoned with polonium a little while ago, a few years ago. Now, this all came out in the press. There was pictures of him looking all like gaunt, like he had AIDS, in the hospital bed, and they were, like it all seemed really scary, really eerie. And people speculating about who'd killed him right now. Well, I'm not really here to speak about that. The one thing I am here to speak about is the book that he'd written, which was never really discussed. And when people were talking about motives, they were going, oh, was he friends with this oligarch, or was he friends with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin? They were going on about all this stuff. The thing they never mentioned was he'd written a book called Blowing Up Russia. And I had heard of that book, but I'd never really heard about what it was about. I'd never really heard too much details. So I think I might have been aware that he'd written a book, but this never really got talked about and I never picked this up. Now, and of course, it was a very obvious motive for lots of people to kill him. Is that he was explaining, I think it was the FSB, but generally speaking, the Russian security services had been blowing things up in Russia and using it to blame Chechens and start wars in Chechnya, etc., etc. Now, on the 7th of July 2005, when the underground got blown up, the next day, because that day I walked home from work, but the day after, because everything was up the spout, I remember that I went to somebody else's house that was near. Well, it wasn't really near. I was just a sort of excuse. It was nice sunny weather. It'd been very rainy the day before. If you remember when the tube blew up, it was pissing it down with rain. The next day, I went round to someone else's house to stay over because it was too difficult to get to where I lived. Or, I could have got there, but I just thought, it's an excuse anyway. And we were watching on the TV, and they had a program on about the Beslan massacre. If you recall, the Beslan massacre was when this nasty Chechen guy, who'd had all his family killed by the nasty Russians, had gone mad, taken a band of Chechens, taken over a school, rigged it up with explosives. It had been surrounded by the Red Army, which is quite a large army, I think, from what I remember. And then he'd blown the school up with all the children in, and he'd sort of got through the impregnable wall and escaped with the most of his band of bandits. Now, I don't know why. I think it was because of the horrific nature of the thing at the time. I never really thought too much about the absolute impossibility of this escape that he did. And then he went on to do, other, he's like the Scarlet Pimpernel, but even the Scarlet Pimpernel could not have done what he did, or maybe he could have done. Maybe I'm shooting the Scarlet Pimpernel short. But the point I'm trying to make is that you've got this Beslan massacre thing came on the TV the day after the 7/7 thing, and I don't know, I just can't really see that the two things aren't unrelated. It strikes me now that possibly they were related, possibly it was some kind of clue for people who are in the know. Now, the reason this is interesting is because on 7/7, this was the 7th of July 2005, I'd been coming down on the tube from North London. I lived in Queen's Park at the time, and I came down the Brown line, that's the Bakerloo line. Then that meets at Oxford Circus. That meets the Victoria line and the Central line. The Victoria line's blue and goes down, and the red line, which goes east to west, down sort of Oxford Street, because the Oxford Circus is right in the middle, sort of, of Oxford Street, isn't it? That station there is Oxford Circus. And I changed on there to get on the Brown line, which is the from the Bakerloo line to get onto the blue line, which is the Victoria line, which goes down to Victoria Station. And then I was working in the office I was working in was literally right next to the spinny sign on the top of Scotland Yard, so it's right near Scotland Yard, and that's St James's Station. Now that's one step on the Circle line or the District line. It looks like an earth wire, the green and the yellow line. You take one step to your right, to the east, and you get there. So you have to go to Victoria first on the Victoria line. Then you go to the east, one stop, you get off there, you go to work. Now, I forget at what stop it was after I'd changed, at Oxford Circus to get onto the Victoria line going downwards. It was somewhere, there's only 2 or 3 stops there. But what happened is the train started to go very, very slowly. And they kept banging on, so like there was sort of like these announcements on the intercom. Now, normally on the intercom, you often can't even really hear what they're saying often. But often when the train's stopped and there's no noise, you can if you're on the carriage. But often you can't really hear what they're saying. But in this instance, you could hear what they were saying. And very bizarrely, normally they just say there's going to be a hold up or something like this. They said that there was going to be that there had been power surges, and there's going to be problems due to power surges. Now, as soon as I heard this power surges word, there's something about it. It just didn't ring true at all. So I heard this thing about power surges, and I thought, that sounds very much to me. I don't know. It's just what it said to me in my head. The government is going to blow the fucking trains up. That's what I thought. Now, I thought they might be using Muslim parties. I did think that. I thought they might blame it on Muslims. They might even have some Muslims to do it, because that's the agenda, as we know. But at the same time, I thought, well, it could be a little bomb, or it could be a great big potato mashing bomb, like, the Bologna bombing, where they blew up a great big station in Bologna, killed loads of people. And I thought, fucking hell, I'm going to Victoria. I'm going to change Victoria. I'm not gonna go down there. I'm gonna have to get off the train. So I got off at Green Park, which is the stop before Victoria. So some people would say, look, if you think the government's going to blow up the trains, you should have got off the train and just gone home, because But I thought, well, yeah, come on. I was getting quite good money at the time, and I thought, no, I'll chance it. I'll get good money, but I'm not going to go to Victoria Station, because I thought probably they're just going to a little bomb, but they might go for a potato bomb, like Bologna bombing, like they've done before, kill loads of people. And I wouldn't chance being in Victoria Station for a day's wage, but I would want to get off before, because I looked around me and I thought, there's no obvious people with carrying anything. There was nothing really particularly obvious. Obviously, the train's packed at this time because of the morning, so it was very busy. But anyway, I got off the train. I walked to work. I got into work. By the time I got into work, my boss was sort of watching the internet very shortly after I got in. It's obviously something weird going on. He said, look, we've been told not to let anyone go home, but look, Tom, just go home. Like, I'll pay you for the day. Make sure you get paid, but just go home. We're not going to do anything today. They keep going on. They're sort of panicking or rushing around mad. Something's happened on the network. We work for Transport for London, who runs the Underground. So, but we were quantity surveyors. We had nothing to do with managing. We're just like, it's kind of accounts, contracts. It's got nothing to do with any of this stuff. Clearly, we weren't going to do any work that day. So I basically went home. Just to take one step back, when I decided in my head that there was something very fishy going on, I was sort of analysing it, and I was thinking, well, if they want to clear the Underground, or they want to make an excuse for something, they should just say there's a delay. You don't say things to panic people. Now, if you want people out the station, you'd say there's a fire. It seems very unusual to me to say there's a power surge, because you've got to remember, it was only minutes before that I got on that train that I'd been on another line, and I'd gone in one of the biggest stations in London, Oxford Circus, one of the biggest changing over stations. Probably everybody's ever been to London's been in it. If they knew that there was a problem beforehand, right, minutes before, why on earth would they let you go into the next state? Like, what I'm trying to say is, look, if you know the train is stopped working, how do you know it's a power surge? How long would it take you to ascertain that? And why are you even bothering telling the public it? It didn't make any sense. So we're talking like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. It's not like half an hour or an hour. The Underground's very, very well regulated and managed. How on earth could they know it was a power surge? For a start off, it doesn't just have like random weird things happening all the time. It's all very, very, very well managed. If you drop like a paperclip off the train and it goes down the Underground, they do track walks every night. They pick the paperclip up and they pick it up because they send cleaners down there every single inch of that track. I had a bag once that got knocked, got caught in the door, came all the way to the next station, then just at the last second it got caught on the lip of the station, the lip of the tunnel, and all the stuff got smashed down the track. All of that stuff was recovered for me by the next day, which was actually, it was a Friday that happened. By the Saturday, it had all been recovered. Some of it had all diesel all over it, where it had been squashed by, the train had run it over and stuff like that. Every single thing out of my bag was recovered, every single thing. And it'd all been, it'd been knocked quite a long way down the tunnel because of the suction. All of it came back. They know everything that happens on trains, so I was well aware of this, and I knew There's absolutely no way in the few minutes it takes for you to get into Victoria Station from, Victoria Station in a different tunnel on the Bakerloo line to go across, and literally from the Bakerloo line, if you're going southbound or you're going northbound the Victoria line to get on the Bakerloo line, or southbound the Bakerloo line to get on the Victoria line, you literally walk like 3 or 4 seconds from one track to the other, I believe. You go just through a tunnel. It's very, very near. How on earth in that time had they decided that it wasn't just a problem with the train, it was a power surge? It's impossible they could have ascertained this. And even if they had ascertained it, why would they be telling the public? This is the point I'm trying to make. It didn't ring true because it was nonsense. Now, I believe this whole thing about a power surge was a code word, and it was designed for people who are in the know to know not to get on the train, or that like the plan is on, it's going live, it's not going to be an exercise, it is going to be the real deal. But this is where it gets interesting, right? As I said, my boss said, just go home. Point is, you couldn't use any of the public transport. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Police helicopters flying around, army helicopters. There's just people everywhere. They were not letting people go through Hyde Park and all this stuff. And it started pissing it down with rain. And I remember, I thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go for a pint. As soon as I got past Hyde Park, because it actually takes quite a long time, because the other thing is when you don't really know where you're going, because Hyde Park, you sort of walk through it, you could quite easily get lost because it's quite big, you can't really see the other side. And I didn't really care, I had all the time in the world, but then it was getting annoying because it was wet. And also the police kept saying, you're not allowed to do that part, you've got to go around this part, and you've got rivers and stuff, and you've got paths to walk around and grass bits, but you don't want to walk across the grass because you might come across a fence or some bushes you can't get through, or a pond or something. So you're walking all over the place. It takes a lot longer, I wasn't really walking in a straight line, I was going all over the place. The point is, I went into this pub sort of on the top side of Hyde Park, the north side. And when I was in that pub, I was kind of like watching the telly, and I was completely sodding wet. I remember taking my jacket off, I was wet through, all my back was all wet. And I remember I was talking to this guy, and he was a contractor who worked for, I believe it was Metronet or Tube Lines. I forget which one. I think it was Metronet. Anyway, Metronet's one of the two companies, and Tube Lines are two main contractors who run the underground for the London Underground, because that's the public, and they're private sector companies, sort of pseudo-public sector. They took on a lot of public sector workers, but technically they're private sector. And I was saying, this all seems extremely strange, it doesn't make any sense. I said, I think this is just, this is just the government blowing stuff up so they could blame it on Muslims who can go to war with someone. I'm sure it is. It all just seemed a bit too strange, and I was telling him about the power surges. And this guy, he wasn't like a mincing type of like wussy-fied fairy, and he just sort of said, but you can't say that because people's families will have died in there. And I said, well, what's that got to do with who's done it? If somebody's blown them up, you're not going to bring them back by just pretending it's fucking darkies have done it, like it's the government's done it. That's who's done it. Obviously, you can't just blame it on a foreign people and then not question. Someone gets murdered, it doesn't mean you just got to pick a suspect and everybody's got to support the fact it's them. You've got to find the right person. But in this case, obviously, people's brains start not working when they're under pressure. And I thought it was very strange anyway. So I remember on the day, I remember saying that to somebody. I remember getting off the train, because I did get off the train, that actually happened. And I remember thinking my logic at the time. Now, this is the point. The next day, I didn't go home. I went to someone else's house who lived at sort of somewhere else in London, nearer to, or with easier access. So I went round their house, and I remember watching this thing with the Beslan massacre. And I remember at the time I used to still watch TV a little bit, and probably I remember that day, and when I was walking down the street, there was like a policeman jumped over a wall in this sort of blue jumpsuit, and it was quite a high wall, and it was like he was searching in some bins for something. And then I remember the next day in the morning, I was walking in from South London, and I had this woman policeman from Blackburn or somewhere telling me that, I was asking her directions, and I don't really know why. I think I was probably quite tired or something. She was sort of telling me north was south and south was north. She was sort of directing me the complete wrong way. And when somebody's just telling you the completely wrong directions, and you're not actually asking her which way is north and south, but it's quite clear she's got no idea where she's talking about. And then you feel very embarrassed that you just have to sort of pretend to go where she tells you to go and go the complete opposite way when she's not looking. But the point is that there was just this complete disarray everywhere, and it was, I believe, a situation to put in a a feeling of panic in people, and definitely with me. Even though to start off with, I knew it was the government. I knew it was the government doing it. And the more things that happened through the day and the reporting of it, I was sure absolutely, because it was the kind of contemporaneous almost reporting that I was watching, because I was watching it in the pub, an hour after it happened. And no, maybe an hour after it happened, I've been watching it at work. Then say 3 hours after it happened, I've been listening to things in the pub. And it was like it kind of put a feeling in my head that something was actually happening, and that then when they started planting all this stuff in, trying to make out it was the suicide bombers and all this nonsense, I started finding myself thinking, well, yeah, because there was all these stories about people not wanting people to go on the train if they had backpacks on, because if they were like Muslim looking, they might be going to blow it up, and there was people telling them like, sort it out, get off the train, you can't come on here with this. And bizarrely, which I have found actually very, very amusing, it's amazing how many Indians go to work with a suit and wear like a rucksack. I've never really noticed it before. And it's like, even though they had this paranoia that they were being victimised, and even ones who weren't Muslims but were just like, looked like they could possibly be Muslims, they were all really paranoid about going on the train with these rucksacks because people might like persecute them. But they still did it anyway. And I remember thinking that was very, very funny. That was very amusing to me. But the point was that because I used to watch TV at the time, even though I knew what was going on at the time, I knew that the government does stuff like this because of the Bologna bombings and the Forced Reconnaissance Regiment. I wasn't so sure, I didn't know about them at the time, but I knew that they blow things up and blame it on communists in the olden days, and I knew the new target wasn't communism, it was brown people from countries with lots of oil and lithium and stuff like that. I knew all that, and heroin, obviously. I knew all this, yet because I used to still watch the TV, despite the fact I knew it was the government, and I knew they did stuff like this before, and I even acted on it, it wasn't like I kind of was blown up and then I sort of caught on afterwards. I knew to get off the train so that it wouldn't affect me. I still sort of had a sort of double feeling that it might actually be Muslims somehow. I don't know what it was, and it's because they're constantly going on and on and on and on and on about it, even though it can't possibly be Muslims, and there's no way that what they're saying is true, and it's all utter nonsense. And the fact that there was no video footage and all that was coming out, because of course if they had done it, they would have just put videos of them getting on the trains, and they would have had video footage of the whole lot. They didn't have any video footage because they weren't even in London at the time, were they? That's the truth of the matter. We know that has been proven now, or they were, but they got there late because they missed the train, didn't they? But the point is that when you watch the TV, it stops your brain from working properly. And if you mix it with George Orwell's concept of double think and newspeak, eventually you get so totally confused by it that even when you know something to be a fact and you act on it, you can't then accurately kind of put that forward and continue to go in that direction. It just completely confuses you. So it doesn't matter how much insight you have, it doesn't matter how much luck you have having that inspiration and good ideas, it doesn't matter what you do in a certain direction. The TV, I don't know how it does it, but it definitely makes you just into a complete moron. And then you start not just saying, well, you start like coming to a kind of conclusion that both things are true. The government did it, the government does stuff like that, but you're kind of still thinking, oh, well, you don't want to have people getting on the trains with like big rucksacks because they might blow it up though. But that people don't get on trains and blow up rucksacks because they don't do that, because they've never actually found anyone doing that. There's never any proof of it. It's just some fairy story that people make up. But anyway, that's basically what I was trying to explain, is the fact that all these things link together, but even if you understand about all of them, you understand how it all fits together. If you watch the TV, it will make you into an idiot, and your brain doesn't function properly, and you'll get caught by any single figment of the government's imagination they want